Welcome to Lawyers in the House with Motley. Wish you had a lawyer in the family? Now you do. Here's your host, Veronica Waters.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the house. It's Lawyers in the House with Motley on WSB. I'm your girl, Veronica Waters. So happy to welcome you back into the house with us today. I got one of my favorite attorneys in the house. You know what? At this point, I know I'm saying this about every single lawyer that comes through here. But really, this is how much I love these guys. And just between you and me and the wall, we almost didn't start this show on time because my guest was out in the hallway talking about the Buffalo Bills' new stadium that's coming. So clearly, I mean, maybe I'm not one of his favorite people because I don't have any Bills stadiums facts to share or whatever, but I am still crazy about him. Let's start off with a little story before I introduce you to our special lawyer in the house today, because it is a one-on-one show. And it's a true story. My nephew Max, driving down a Nashville street so proudly in his brand new car. It was a gift because he had graduated college. He'd been driving like a beater for most of his college years. But as he graduated, his parents gave him a brand new car. He's so proud to have it. And he's sitting there at a light weeks after he got the car. I mean, weeks. And bam, somebody plows into him from behind. And then they take off. And he's like, what am I going to do? There's nothing I can do. And I said, you know what? Actually, there is something you can do. Do you know what it is? Well, if you don't, we're going to fill you in. And first, let me introduce you to the gentleman who's going to give you all the deets on what you can do if somebody is responsible for hitting you and they don't have enough insurance, or you don't even know who they are. He is Mr. Orlando Mara, Motley injury attorney. Welcome back to the house,
Thanks,
Orlando.
Nice to be here.
I am always happy to have you in the house. You know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite people, for sure. We usually just riff about football and stuff when we're in here. We're not going to do that today.
Oh, okay.
Don't be. I know you're disappointed.
I am disappointed. We'd have some Titans talk, but I guess we're not going there.
Oh man, yeah. We didn't have a very good season last time. Orlando and I don't know if I'm exaggerating and say we had a little kinship because he went to law school in my home state of Mississippi College of Law, right?
That's true, Jackson, Mississippi.
And before law school, where'd you go to undergrad?
St. Francis in Pennsylvania.
In Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is your home?
No, actually, Western New York, Buffalo.
Buffalo is your home?
Niagara Falls, New York is where I grew up, which is
beautiful.
a few miles from Buffalo, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where the Bills connection comes from.
You've always been a Bills fan then?
Correct.
Okay. So Orlando has been in the law for more than 3 decades now, yes?
About 35 years.
And how long of that at Motley?
28 years.
28 years. Clearly your home.
Yes, exactly. It's been a wonderful 28 years, and it's something that I never would regret. It's a wonderful time, and it was an excellent experience.
I know that you have won millions upon millions for your clients since you've been at Motley and all of that time, and that you're applauded for being able to explain really complex ideas and concepts to people in real terms to help navigate them through the legal process. People really sort of applaud you for that. And I want to ask you about this philosophy of success that you have. You quote Will Rogers. If you want to be successful, it's just this simple. Know what you are doing, love what you're doing, and believe in what you're doing.
Correct. I think that's something to live by. You know, we try our best at Motley to do that. And I think if you love what you do, you're not working. It's not a job. It's something that you look forward to doing every day. And that's the way I felt my whole life. And it was something that was instilled to me by my father. You've got to love what you do. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. If you love it, it's not work. It's a career. And that's what I've lived by.
Mm-hmm. You're a husband and a father, right? Are your kids
Correct.
grown yet?
It's debatable. But yeah, they're old enough to be grown. I'll say that. They're 30 and almost 28, 24, and 21.
Did any of them follow you into the legal field?
Yeah, my second daughter, Elizabeth, is an attorney with Motley.
What? Oh my gosh! You guys didn't tell me. We got to get her in here.
Oh yeah, I think she'll make an appearance soon. I believe.
I love that. I'd love to have the two of you on a show together.
Mm-hmm. Sure,
Yeah.
that would be great.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So you are clearly in love with what you do, but I always want to know if you knew going into law that this field was where you would be or where you wanted to be.
Well, that's a good question. I don't think that going into it, I knew what to expect. I knew it was something I wanted to do, but there's so many different areas you can do in the law. I mean,
No kidding.
anything from teaching to dozens of different areas, and kind of fell into this in Florida. I worked with an attorney down there, and we did everything. We did a little bit of everything. When I moved to Atlanta, it just seemed like a good fit for me because I understood it. I knew the work, and I had already kind of gotten in that area where personal injury was something that I enjoyed doing. It was helpful and it was fulfilling.
Fulfilling. That is what we want. If you have to go to work every day, don't you want your job to be fulfilling? Mr. Orlando Mara, Montlick injury attorney, thank you so much for being in the house. This is Lawyers in the House with Montlick on WSB. Today we're talking about the two big letters UM. UM.
Correct.
Right? I guess we could add an I in there sometimes, the UIM. But let's start off with UM. What is UM? We talk about this a lot on the show.
Mm-hmm. It's uninsured motorist coverage.
Uninsured motorist coverage.
And what it means, in effect, is that if the person who hit you either has no insurance or is underinsured, you're able to use your uninsured or underinsured coverage. And we like to tell clients it's the one coverage you buy for yourself. You buy liability if you hurt somebody else. You buy property damage if the vehicle. But uninsured motorist coverage is a way to protect yourself and your family if the person that hits you, again, is uninsured or underinsured against injury.
I think this is something that I like to point out because not everybody knows everything, okay? So, and I believe I've said more than once on this show, when I first got my insurance years ago and there was this section for uninsured motorist coverage. I thought I was buying insurance for the other guy.
Right.
And I was like, why am I insuring that guy? They can get their own insurance. I didn't realize. Nobody really explained to me, not in a way that I could understand, that the uninsured motorist coverage is for me. Correct.
And it is misunderstood, I believe, a lot. And I think it's something that is not brought to the forefront enough. I mean, again, it's extremely important to have that to protect yourself and your family. And there's different types of uninsured, and you have two different types of uninsured motorists. There's the reduced by, which means whatever coverage you have is reduced by what the person that caused the accident has, or there's also the add-on uninsured motorist coverage, which means you're adding it on to the person that caused the accident. So it's two different types, and I think what goes under the radar a lot is that people want to buy liability coverage, again, if you hurt somebody else and property damage. But this is the thing, and we can't overemphasize it enough, that a lot of clients that we have don't have and don't understand that they have it.
Wow.
Don't have it.
They don't have it or don't understand that they do.
Correct. Or don't even understand what it is, like you mentioned. It's something that needs to be emphasized much more than what we do now. I think it's crucial. The uninsured, again, is just something we see it a lot in our practice where a person is injured and they think we hear the term a lot, fully insured. And usually when I hear that, what they're really saying is they're minimally insured.
So they've got some coverage, but it's really low limits probably.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in 2021, there were 28 million uninsured drivers in America. Those are the latest statistics that we have. That's a huge number. 1 out of every 8 drivers, that's almost 13% of folks, don't have any auto insurance at all. 13% of the folks around you on the roads here in the U.S. got no insurance.
Correct. I think, yes, anytime between 12 and 15% at any one time are uninsured. And clearly the uninsured motorist would cover that. Even your example earlier, he was hit from behind and the driver took off. He would be able to use his uninsured motorist coverage. because and that's something people don't realize either. You know, he thought there's nowhere to go with it, but he can use that uninsured motorist coverage to protect him, and because a driver who runs from the scene is an uninsured driver.
Because you don't know who they are.
Correct.
They've taken off from the scene.
Exactly.
And we've talked about this before. A lot of times the reason somebody might take off is because they don't have insurance.
Correct.
Or they were doing something untoward in the car that
Correct.
they're not trying to get in trouble for. So what happens when you are hit by an uninsured driver? There are so many people on the roads around us. I had seen a statistic from a car insurance site that talked about how the odds of you getting into a wreck or would happen every 17.9 years, so almost 18 years. The average driver will have a car accident. So that's several accidents over the course of your lifetime if you're an average driver. Yes?
Correct.
Then when you think about how frequent car crashes happen, there's a good chance that somebody in that accident is not going to have either any insurance or the right insurance. And how do you deal with that when they come to you, Orlando?
Well, it's difficult because, again, a lot of times we'll hear, I'm fully insured. And I think I can give you a couple of examples from different walks of life. Recently, we had a client who was coming home from work. He's a construction worker, gets rear-ended. Unfortunately, he ends up with a disc herniation in his neck, has to have surgery, goes through the process. He has liability coverage of $50,000 per person, $100,000 per accident, and he thinks he's covered because he kept telling me he's fully insured. However, he had no uninsured motorist coverage. And the person that hit him only had the minimum coverage in Georgia, which is $25,000 per person. So the only coverage available for him was the $25,000 of liability coverage, and his bills exceeded $50,000. And it was tough for him. I mean, he had a family, 3 children. They had to lost their apartment because he was the sole income for the family. He ended up living in a car for a while. We got him straightened out for him, but he really felt like he was fully insured.
Medical bills are not cheap. I know
No.
that seems like stating the obvious, right? But it's
Correct.
not cheap. You have got to do whatever you can to protect yourself. I think we can get into some wrinkles about the ways that UM, uninsured motorist coverage, or UIM, underinsured motorist coverage, can come into play. I want to, though, find out from you if I'm hit by somebody who drives away, are there limitations to how I can use the UM?
Well, yeah, you're limited to the policy limit. Every policy has what's called a policy limit. And what that means is the most the insurance company has to pay under most circumstances. So if you had minimum coverage, for example, you would have a $25,000 per person, $50,000 per accident.
Okay.
And what that means is it's a split limit, which most people would have. The first number is per person. So no one person can get more than that first number. Minimum would be $25,000. The second means the most insurance
The
companies...
minimum or the maximum would be
The
25?
minimum, the maximum is $25,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So the most you're going to get, the maximum is $25,000 if you have a minimum coverage. The second number is the per accident. So no matter how many people are injured in the accident, the most they're going to pay is $50,000. So
Okay,
if you've got,
how do we inflate those numbers, particularly when you think about how expensive medical bills can be after an accident? Let's get a little more into this, full coverage versus minimum coverage, when we come back here on Lawyers in the House with Montlick on WSB. Welcome back to Lawyers in the House with Montlick on WSB. I'm Veronica Waters here with Montlick injury attorney Orlando Mara. We're talking about uninsured motorist coverage, and it's something that can help protect you and your well-being and your finances if you are in an accident through no fault of your own. The personal injury attorney can't do it without your help. Now, Orlando has talked a couple of times today about somebody saying, I've got full coverage, I'm fully covered. Who defines what in the world that even means, Orlando?
well, that's a good question. I think a lot of times it comes from an insurance agent telling them, the client or the prospective customer saying to them, am I fully insured? Am I covered? And they're saying, yes, you're fully insured. Meaning, I think a lot of times from insurance companies, you're minimally insured. Because a lot of these coverages, they're looking out for their best interest, the insurance company. And I think a lot of times they will sell you things that's in their best interest and not necessarily in the driver's best interest. Because to give you an example, we had a client recently who has a very successful business, a husband and wife. The wife's in Atlanta downtown. As she's getting out of the vehicle, she gets rear-ended and breaks her leg pretty severely. Has to have surgery. The person that caused the accident had minimum coverage, which in Georgia is $25,000 per person of liability, which means if you're at fault. And basically, he thought he's well covered. Turned out he had $1 million of liability and $1 million of all kinds of coverages and property damage, but his uninsured motorist coverage was minimum $25,000 per person, and it was reduced by, like we talked about, that means it's reduced by what the person that caused the accident has. So he couldn't even use his coverage.
No, so he only $25,000
was covered, and her bills exceeded $50,000, and she was significantly injured.
Oh my gosh.
So it was sad, and he was livid. He just couldn't believe he wasn't really fully covered. He was minimally covered.
You've
with
got $1 million policy.
Correct.
And no insurance that's going to pay for your wife's broken leg.
Exactly. He came in to see us. He went from there to a new insurance agent. So he just changed his whole coverage because couldn't believe that was the situation. And the thing with uninsured motorist coverage, it isn't as costly as liability if you hurt somebody else or property damage for your vehicle. It's somewhat limited in what they can charge on that, and I think that's why a lot of insurance companies don't seem to want to push that coverage.
Was that guy in Georgia?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Georgia does not require uninsured motorist coverage, right?
Correct. I think most states don't. There are some that do, but for the most part, it isn't required. And if it is required, I'm sure it would be just very minimal that you'd have to have. In Georgia, and I believe most states, you can have as much uninsured motorist coverage as you have liability coverage.
Okay.
So really, it would pay.
So if I've got $1 million liability coverage, I could get $1 million
of uninsured, correct.
Of uninsured motorist coverage.
Correct.
Let me just say that. I'm not working for any insurance company, but I know that if I'm hurt, I want to be able to be, have my neighbor or my good hands folks step in, right?
Correct.
Or the general, whatever.
Exactly.
Come help me out, folks. Talking about uninsured motorist coverage here on Lawyers in the House with Motley on WSB. Stay with us. Welcome back, my friends, to The House. This is Lawyers in the House with Motley on WSB. I am Veronica Waters here with Motley injury attorney Orlando Mara, talking about what you can do if you are hit by somebody who doesn't have insurance or doesn't have enough, or you don't even know who smacked you. Yeah, the topic is uninsured motorist coverage, and there were some real gems in the first half of the show. But don't worry if you missed it. Always know that you can find us at lawyersinthehouse.com. You can go to youtube.com where you can see and hear us. Check out our smiling faces, right? Mm-hmm. We want to see people. Hey, look at that smile. And remember to hit us up every day of the week on social at Motley Law. Uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. Orlando, they sound similar. They're pretty much the same.
Well, they're a little different. The uninsured motorist coverage means that the person who hits you has no insurance, and it happens, like we talked about, 12 to 15% of the time throughout the country. However, underinsured coverage is a little different. It means that the person who hits you has insurance, but it's not enough to cover the injuries that you have.
Okay, and this is going to step in and pay if the driver who causes the accident has no insurance or doesn't have enough. It's going to pay for my damages.
Correct. And when your insurance company pays for your damages or your injuries, they in turn will then go to the person who caused the accident and deal with them and try to get the money from them. It has nothing to do with your insurance per se, other than the fact you have it. So it can't hurt you in using your uninsured motorist coverage. Most states have regulations against insurance companies raising rates or giving you a hard time or canceling it because you use your uninsured motorist coverage. There's a public policy argument that all states want you to have it. So most states have something in there about that. And like, as you know, we work throughout the whole country. Every states are a little different. Some states are different than others, but for the most part, it's encouraged to have it. And if you don't have it, you're putting yourself at risk.
I talked earlier in the show about my nephew Max and having this happen to him in Tennessee. Hit and run driver.
Mm-hmm.
It steps in when there's a hit and run driver, right? Are there limitations to how that is applied? Are there sort of like ground rules or something that you have to play by when you're thinking about that?
Yeah, and most states have it, and most states are somewhat similar. In Georgia specifically, you have to either have contact with the vehicle or a witness to be able to make a claim.
So you can't drive into a tree and say, "Oh, hit and run."
Correct.
Okay.
It has to pass some people want to say the smell test, but it has to pass the test, that this is a real thing.
If this was a hit and run driver, Veronica, why are there leaves in your hood? Okay. Where'd the branches come from? Okay.
Exactly.
It was a lumber truck. Okay.
So those are the two. In most states, Tennessee is similar. We talked a little about that, again, you have to have some kind of contact or a witness. And generally, you'd like to get a police report as well. I mean, you minimally need at least a witness or contact, but you want to have the police come and at least memorialize what happened, and it helps you, too, with the claim later on.
What do you need to do if your state doesn't – if you're living in a state and you don't have the ability to use your UM coverage on a hit and run – do you have any other recourse?
Not really. I think I would encourage you to call an attorney and talk about it because there are other alternatives.
Like collision coverage or something.
Well, collision coverage would cover your vehicle, your own vehicle, so I would cover that. And there are also other coverages available. Like, for example, if you're in an accident and there are levels of uninsured motorist coverage. For example, and a lot of states have this as well, if you're in an accident, your own uninsured motorist coverage in Georgia files you. So if you're in somebody else's vehicle, for example, your own uninsured motorist coverage comes first. Then if you live with a relative, it's called resident relative coverage. You can use any relative coverage that lives with you. So any mother, father, brother, sister, aunt, uncle that lives in your home and has a vehicle, you can use their insurance as well.
Oh, that's great. Now, do people say, "Well, what you doing in my?"
Well, yeah, they do.
What you using my insurance?
Exactly, they do a lot, and so we have to talk to them and explain that it's to the injured person's advantage to use it.
Now, is that what you mean when you talk about? I've heard the term stacking coverage. Is that what you mean, or is
Correct.
that something different?
No, that's exactly what it means. Stacking means you're adding coverages together, and the term is just is a term we use, but. For example, if you're in somebody else's vehicle, like we said, yours comes first. Second is a resident relative because they're most closely related with you. And third would be the vehicle that you were in.
Okay.
And you can stack all three of those coverages, and that happens a lot.
Okay.
And if you could have, and really what you look for is separate policies on each vehicle. If you have a separate policy, you can add those together in your household as well.
Does that make for a larger benefit to the injured person?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, it's huge because in the end, especially if there's no coverage or very minimal up front and somebody's severely injured, you can stack all those coverages together.
In 28 years at Montlick, I know you had some great successes with this kind of thing. Give me some examples of like some victories that you've had on behalf of your clients.
Sure. Recently, we had a client who, in effect, was severely injured, had a fractured femur in an accident. The person hit him was minimally covered, which we see a lot. Person that causes accidents generally are minimally covered. And basically, he had 3 separate policies, all with reduced by uninsured motorist coverage. So, which means the most he could possibly recover would be the $25,000 from the person who caused the accident. One is a reduced by, so that's canceled. So the other 2 would be a total of $75,000 available. Mm-hmm. However, the insurance company has to produce what we call a selection rejection form.
Rejection, okay.
Correct. Which means that basically says the insurance company had told this particular client, you could have as much uninsured motorist coverage as you have liability, but you're choosing to take less. I don't know if they always explain it to him like that. A lot of times insurance companies just say sign here, but that's why it's important to ask questions when you talk to your insurance agent. But in any case, the insurance company couldn't produce these 3 because you need one for every policy.
Okay.
So they couldn't produce these. So instead of getting $75,000 available, he was able to recover, or we recovered for him $325,000, which was life-changing for him. He was able to take care of himself and his family during the time he was off from work, and he came out of it okay. But it makes a difference to be able to do that, and that's why it's important, I think, when you get in an accident, to call an attorney, preferably, like 1-800-LAW-NEED, anywhere in the country. So we work throughout the country, and we'd like to be able to help you out with that.
That is huge, to go from a potential max of $75,000 to $325,000. That's incredible, and you're right. It can just give you so much more breathing room while you're getting well. Whether you're the only breadwinner in your house or not, I mean, that can really make the difference to get you from A to B to C. When you're in a situation like this, I just think of how scary it would be to be hurt, not be able to work, not have a lot of income at that point, and you're just, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay these bills that are stacking up? Quick question: you've talked about taking all these cases in different states. Does this, and forgive me if this is a naive question, but does my UM coverage follow me from state to state, even if the laws are different?
Yes, correct. I mean, every state's a little different, and if you have your uninsured motorist coverage, because you would get it from the states you live in, so those rules would apply. So as far as the liability may be different in different states, but as far as your own uninsured motorist coverage goes, you're good anywhere in the country as long as you have coverage in that state. The rules would go back to the states you purchased the contract in.
Oh, wow, that's a relief to know. That is a relief to know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make sure that I check my limits again too, to make sure
it doesn't hurt.
to make sure they're up to speed. Now, I'm assuming, or tell me if I'm wrong. Do I have to be driving to use my uninsured motorist coverage, or
no? Not at all. You could be a pedestrian. And
what?
Yeah, you could be a pedestrian and you were hit by somebody crossing the street, which happens significantly, and then your own uninsured motorist coverage would still come into play. Same as if you were in a vehicle. So it helps pedestrian, and you don't even have to be in your own vehicle like we talked about. Your own coverage comes first, and then resident relative, if you live with a relative, and then the vehicle you were in. But if you're a pedestrian, it's available as well, because that is a motor vehicle accident.
If I'm a passenger?
Passengers, exactly the same thing.
Wow, that's incredible. It really is such a multi-layered thing, and it's shocking when you think about how many folks don't have it.
It is.
Wow. To your point, and you know what, this is a question maybe nobody can answer, but could an agent get in trouble for not telling me how helpful this could be? My feelings would be hurt at the very least to know. Like that angry guy who had $1 million in. Did y'all hear that story? Make sure you check us out on LawyersInTheHouse.com. $1 million in coverage and zero
usable uninsured motorist coverage.
Zero usable for uninsured motorists. That is just heartbreaking. So heartbreaking. You think that you're doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. We're making sure that we're, and in Georgia, as we sit here today, it is a law that you're supposed to be insured.
Correct.
You just don't have to get uninsured motorist. Can you get a ticket? Can you get in trouble if you don't have, how do you get in trouble if you don't have insurance?
If you don't have insurance, yeah, it's ticketable. You definitely would get a ticket, and it depends on the extent of it and what your history was. You could be arrested as well for not having insurance on your vehicle.
Is it expensive to add it to my policy?
Not at all. I think, first of all, you almost have to have it. I think it would be a risk not to.
It's almost like putting a limit on what I'm willing to give myself.
Correct. Like we talked about before. It's a one coverage you buy for yourself. Other coverages are liability. We talked about if you hurt somebody else, and property damage for your vehicle. But I think it's first of all, it is cost less than liability coverage, and it's generally less than collision coverage. And it's somewhat regulated by most states as far as how much it can be charged. And I think that lends to a little bit more of insurance companies not pushing it as much.
Because it can pay out so much, considering how many people are uninsured on the roads. A lot more people might need it than not.
Correct.
Yeah. So over the course of your nearly 3 decades at Montlick, how many folks would you say, on average, percentage of folks who come to you with enough insurance coverage?
Not a lot.
Wow.
I hate to say that. I mean, because it isn't. I don't think people realize what's available to them and really sit down with the insurance agent to understand it until they're in an accident. And once the accident happens, they learn. And every client we have, I always give them the uninsured motorist speech afterwards, saying you need to have more and you need to have add-on coverage versus the
Don't add
reduced.
insult to injury, sir.
That's right. Well, they have to hear it because
it's
it's
going
something
forward,
that's,
right? Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think it's something that's important to, if you're going to drive, especially in busy cities, accidents happen, you've got to be covered.
I do want to point out that it's hard not to notice if you are tuning in to us week after week, how often the mention of uninsured motorist coverage comes up in the topics because it applies to so many instances, to so many people so often. And to know that there's this little nugget that we could get to protect ourselves, not the other guy like I thought, but to protect ourselves is right there. And it can be life-changing. It can be life-changing. Here on Lawyers in the House with Montlick, we've got something you've been waiting for all hour long coming your way. It is the Montlick closing argument. Don't you miss it. You are back in the house, Lawyers in the House with Montlick on WSB. I'm Veronica Waters here with Montlick injury attorney Orlando Mara talking about uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. If you don't have it, I know you're going to want to go look to see how to get it. It is time for the Montlick closing argument. Orlando Mara, take it away.
Well, I think it's important to insure your future. In other words, you need to be able to be covered for yourself. I think that's the thing that gets missed a lot in all policies and in insurance. People feel like they're fully insured, as we talked about a number of times, and they're really not because they don't have enough uninsured motorist coverage. I think the number of ways we use the uninsured motorist coverage, we talked about the fact if you're hit by a hit-and-run driver or a phantom driver, you can use the coverage. Either if there was contact made by the phantom driver, or if there was a witness to the incident. But more to the point, I think, is the underinsured coverage, where people feel like they have some coverage, but it isn't enough. And I think I would recommend to everybody who owns a vehicle to talk to their insurance agent and make sure that they have enough uninsured motorist coverage, or at least as much if they have liability coverage. Again, liability if you hurt somebody else. We all have that. In most states, that's required. But if the uninsured motorist coverage is not necessarily required in all states, so you really want to have that coverage so that you and your family are protected, because you really never know what's going to happen. And you hate to wait until an accident to find out what you have.
Yeah. Helping me find out what I have can really come with the help of somebody like you, getting the right attorney.
Yes, it can. Basically, I think that's a good point. And I think coming in and talking to us about it, and we talked about a little bit too about different levels of uninsured motorist coverage. Your own files you. And you can also have a resident relative coverage. If you live with a relative who owns a vehicle, you can use their uninsured motorist coverage and the vehicle you were in. So there's different levels of uninsured motorist coverage. And also bear in mind there's certain requirements on notice. For example, if you want to use somebody's uninsured motorist coverage, a relative, for example, that's in your household, generally you have somewhere between 30 and 60 days to give them notice. If you don't do that, you can never use it. So it's extremely important to see an attorney as soon as possible after an accident, and please call us. We certainly can help.
Yeah, get somebody who knows what the heck they're doing. Does Montlick have a rep, you think, with the insurance companies at this point?
I think so. I think that, they're well aware of who we are, and that they're aware that we will do everything we can to help our clients.
Not just take the first lowball offer that comes your way?
Certainly not. No.
Thank you so much to Orlando Mara, Montlick injury attorney, talking about uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. We got some really good gems today. Thank you so much. I think we should all think of UM. Think of uninsured motorist coverage like you're a boxer, or just a regular Jane or Joe who is learning some self-defense. You want to protect yourself at all times. I'm Veronica Waters. This is Lawyers in the House with Montlick on WSB. We will see you next time.